to talk. Welcome one and all. So the the birthright citizenship not only has been won by President Trump, it's one of his greatest victories, what happened in the Supreme Court yesterday. And I'm going to explain this to you guys. You know, the liberals and the never Trumpers are obsessed with one thing and one thing only, and that is Trump having losses. They want Trump to win, to lose. These never Trumpers and liberals, they want Trump to lose so much that they can't see five minutes ahead as to what's actually happening here. And I know all these idiots are going to say, "Oh no, he lost. He won," and he won on birthright citizenship for a number of reasons. You may have noticed every conservative influencer out there is united behind this issue. Just a couple days ago, and it's been going on since Charlie Kirk was assassinated by the Never Trumpers, the conservative influencer class has been completely divided, undermining President Trump, trying to stop the MAGA agenda, and now they're all united. This is just one example. This is not the only reason Trump won, because a bunch of self-important people on YouTube, think that they're so important, But the influencer class are all united together for the first time since the Never Trumpers assassinated Charlie Kirk. And in one voice, they're all saying the same thing. So that is a big positive win, because as soon as we win the midterms, the presidential election season will be getting heated up not long after that. So that's a big win. Don't you guys agree with that, by the way? Absolutely. How could you not? How could you not agree with that? But also, how did Trump get elected in the first place, right? How did Trump get elected in the first place? This is the brilliance of Trump. President Trump knew that the Supreme Court was going to do this, okay? He knows that John Roberts is a traitor and a plant and a never Trumper. And he knows Amy Coney Barrett's compromised. He knew how this decision was going to come down. Did he look surprised to you yesterday? I don't think so. But how did President Trump get elected the first time? What led to President Trump coming down the escalator? And it's a very similar thing to what led to Barack Hussein Obama's first election in 2008. See, the way that the election cycles work, and Trump's doing everything different. He's turning everything upside down. And the way that election cycles work, liberals don't have a lick of sense or patience, so they don't understand this, is elections are reactions a lot of times, okay? And what elections are reactions to is the other side that typically is not in power. As an example, George W. Bush, when he was in his second term, was very unpopular. The country had realized he had completely lied to the world about WMDs. There was a major economic crisis going on at the time, the subprime mortgage crisis, and there was, it was a disaster. And because of the lies and the economic downturn of Bush, G.W. Bush, and all of this, the pendulum swung to the left, and that's how Barack Hussein Obama came out of nowhere and got elected. Well, it was a similar thing that led to President Trump coming down the escalator. President Trump, there was a big call for President Trump to run. Then he came down the escalator and did it. And President Trump's first term, coming down the escalator and winning that election, that was a backlash to the Obama 8 years of socialism. That was a response to the radicalism of Obama. You know, Obama was so radical, so socialist, so anti-American, that the pendulum of the country swung very far right and said, hey, we need Donald Trump to come down this escalator and get this country back on track. So here we are in a second and non-consecutive term with Trump. And another reason that President Trump won this birthright citizenship decision in the Supreme Court, the first reason I gave, now this is that Trump won, is that all of the conservative influencers are on board on one now, right? If you go online, every conservative influencer is on board on the same page on birthright citizenship. That's number one. That's one, not that it's the most important, but it is important. So we're back to one voice for the first time since the Never Trumpers assassinated Charlie Kirk. So we're back with one voice there. But the other thing is, President Trump has exposed how radical the liberals are and what they're trying to do, which is to colonize the United States with a foreign-born peasant class, and replace the American people with foreign-born people that through some legal loophole have this birthright citizenship. And you couple that with these democratic socialist commies like this idiot that won in Colorado, and the pendulum, even though we've got this great MAGA king as our president, Donald Trump, that we love so much, the left is scaring the crap out of everybody. They're too radically left. And when the country is radical on either side, to the right or the left, when the American people see a radicalism on either side, the pendulum goes to the other. If the country's radically right in an election, the pendulum in a presidential will go to the right. To the left. If a country is viewed as being, if the politicians are viewed as being radically left, the voters go radically right. So President Trump has shown how radically left the Democrats are on all these different levels. And that will wake up the voters to continue to vote for Republicans, for MAGA. That's another reason that this was a victory. It's amazing to me that people don't see this. I'm listening to all of these self-important conservative voices out there. None of them are picking up on this. They're all talking about Amy Coney Barrett and Roberts, and that's worthy of a mention, but let's get some perspective here. By the way, if you're new, my name is Brian. This is where MAGA comes to talk. Subscribe if you're new. On the next stream, I'll be live in the studio, and I'll be taking live calls. So you can call me on the air whether you agree or disagree with all of this. Always, your calls are always welcome, and the toll-free number will be pinned in the live chat on that stream. So those are a couple of reasons. Also, President Trump announced something that I don't think has ever been done before, right? And what that is he's doing something that never happens in the midterms. He's having a Republican National Convention, like you would have in a presidential election season. And what the conventions are pep rallies. It's like the Comic-Con of politics. Well, I guess CPAC is like Comic-Con. This is bigger. It's like the World Cup because it's every 4 years. He's doing a Republican National Convention in the midterms, which, to my knowledge, has never been done before. And if it has been done, it's been a long time before my days, I'll tell you that. So that's a big pep rally we've got going. But what President Trump is doing is putting together the new Republican Party platform. And right at the top of the new Republican Party platform will be the elimination of birthright citizenship. And if you remember, before Trump overturned Roe v. Wade, in the 80s and 90s and in the 2000s, one of the biggest issues for both parties was Roe v. Wade. And there was something that was called a litmus test. Remember a litmus test from science class in high school? And there was a litmus test on Roe v. Wade, and both the Republican and Democrat Party had it. If you were a Democrat, do you support Roe v. Wade? And the litmus test was yes. And if you said no, you didn't win elections as Democrats. If you were a Republican running, the litmus test was, do you support the overturning of Roe v. Wade? And if you didn't say yes, you were out. You failed the litmus test. Well, President Trump overturned Roe v. Wade, which is amazing, and who would have thought that was ever possible? But President Trump's a miracle man, right? So the new Republican Party platform that President Trump is putting together, right at the top of it is overturning birthright citizenship. And that's going to be the new litmus test. And it'll probably be the litmus test for both parties. Do you support the elimination of birthright citizenship? So everything about the Supreme Court decision yesterday on birthright citizenship was a massive victory for President Trump and the MAGA movement of the Republican Party. Sorry to spoil your morning, you idiotic liberal trolls. But that's the way of it. And, so I'm going to cover all that on the morning show today with your calls. And, the Supreme Court was wrong. They're just corrupt, right? They're just corrupt. I'll talk more about that in a bit with John Roberts. But birthright citizenship happened as a response. There's no context. And these conservative influencers, they don't have a proper education of the history of this country, so they don't understand. The birthright citizenship was 100% about slaves and the freed slaves, because there was a question in this country as to whether or not the newly freed slaves were citizens because of another Supreme Court decision. There was I'll go through this in more detail on the morning show today, but the Dred Scott decision, you trolls probably don't even know about that because they don't, too worried learning, too much learning about critical race theory and transgender ideology in school these days. But Dred Scott was a slave. He had escaped to a free state. If I remember offhand, I want to say Wisconsin. I could be wrong about the state. And he had lived there for a couple of years. And under the state law, that made him a free man. And he sued his owner for the freedom of himself and his family. And in this case, the Dred Scott case, and you've often heard the Dred Scott decision. Dred Scott was a man. Dred Scott was his name, and he was a slave. So he sued his master, saying he was no longer a slave because he had been in the state for however many years he had to be there to be a free man. And the Supreme, a little more detailed, I'll go through the details on the morning show today. But the Supreme Court ruled in the Dred Scott case that slaves and former slaves had no standing to sue because they were not U.S. citizens. So the Supreme Court had actually ruled in Dred Scott that slaves and former slaves were not citizens of the United States. Well, that was a Supreme Court ruling. Slaves and former slaves were not citizens, according to the Supreme Court. And the Birthright Citizenship Amendment was to establish that, yes, the freed slaves are indeed citizens, and the Dred Scott decision was no longer relevant because they changed the law. And everybody knows that's what it's about. I mean, this is not new information. It's just they don't teach that in school anymore because it's been taken over by blue-haired teachers with trans flags in their classrooms. But that's why that's there. So the decision was wrong. It will be overturned. There will be a stopping of women coming into this country who are pregnant. There will be a major, major border stoppage on birth tourism. You know, China is breeding an entire, God only knows how many, group of U.S. citizens. So the Chinese have this birth tourism where they fly pregnant women to America for 5 minutes. They drop a baby. They get it. They're a citizen. They get a social security number. They go back to China. They're little babies, but they're U.S. citizens because of this loophole or exploitation of the birthright clause. And so what happens? If you're born in China and one of your parents is a U.S. citizen, you're a U.S. citizen. So there's been 100 or 1,000 or so, according to the latest reports, of Chinese babies being born in America and immediately flown back that are U.S. citizens. But their kids in China are U.S. citizens too. They could have a damn million U.S. citizens in China ready to come over here and take over. And by the way, these Chinese babies are eligible to be president. They're natural-born U.S. citizens, according to the misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment. El Chapo did this. He sent his beauty queen wife to California to have his babies. So El Chapo's babies were in the United States for 12 or 13 minutes, and they're eligible to be president. Think about that. El Chapo's grandchildren are all U.S. citizens. I know, it's crazy. Yes, take over. Why do you think the Chinese are making so many American citizens like this? What is their purpose? Why else would they be doing that? Exactly. Not for any good reasons. So that's what's happening, man. That's the way of the world. You get an education on this channel. Subscribe if you're new. My name's Brian. This is indeed where MAGA comes to talk. But that's the way it is, man. So I'm going to go through all of this on the program this morning and take your calls on the morning show. So make sure you're there. It'll be at 6 a.m. Eastern, about 90 minutes from now. So what happened yesterday was a massive victory for Donald Trump, the MAGA movement, the Republican Party. And the Never-Trumpers and the Democrats are so deranged with their Trump derangement syndrome. The things I just shared with you in the last 18 and a half minutes on this stream, they can't even let that sink in. It's like they're like they haven't heard this before. All the left and the Never-Trumpers stand for is Trump having a loss somewhere. So no matter what happens, they see a loss. They can't see the long game that President Trump's playing here. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Oh yeah, I can't wait to get on the air and explain all of this. Very important stuff here. Very important. Such a big day today. Oh man, these are great stories. Yeah, well, you haven't heard what I said, and my explanation of what happened yesterday is one 100% accurate of what's going on here. Boy, there's a lot of semis on the road this morning. Nope. Nope, Trump never loses. And then they got this other story that Trump made like over $1 billion on crypto. So what? Is there some crime against making money? Only liberals would think that it's immoral and criminal to make. Do you know who thinks it's unethical, illegal to make money? People that don't have any and are losers and know they'll never have any. Amazes me. I don't care if he made $10 billion off crypto. What is it, 1.3, 1.4 billion they're reporting that he made off crypto? So what? If you're new to my channel, make sure you subscribe. And click the notification bell too. Making money is not a crime. I know liberals think that making money is a crime. If you think making money is a crime, tell me how Bernie Sanders became a multimillionaire in the Senate, how AOC became a millionaire, how Ilhan Omar became a millionaire, how Presley in the squad became a millionaire, right? While in office with no businesses. We know how Trump made his money. This latest billion plus is from crypto. What did Bernie, Presley, AOC, and all these snakes, what did they do to become millionaires? That's right. Corruption. Trump's not corrupt. Trump is not corrupt, and that's why they hate him, because he's not corrupt. Not only is Trump not corrupt, he's not corruptible. That really makes them hate him. I gotta pass these semis. Boy, what time did these guys hit the road? They're on the road, all loaded up. Making money is not corruption in business. Right? But not having any business and just being a member of Congress, then all of a sudden you're a millionaire, well, that's corruption. I mean, Ilhan Omar reported $30 million net worth. How'd that happen? She had a negative net worth when she went to Congress. Now she's worth 30 mil. How did Ilhan Omar make her money? Clearing centers? Yeah, but all the commie leaders are millionaires. Mamdani's a millionaire, Bernie's a millionaire, AOC's a millionaire. her husband was broke when they got married. No, he's not wealthy. Nope, not her husband. Her husband was broke. They made all the money after they got married. And AOC's not married. I mean, how many people do you know go from a debt to being worth millions of dollars in just a couple of years, other than members of Congress and lottery winners? Right? Exactly. If they had that kind of business skill, they wouldn't be in Congress. Heading to Starbucks. I'm behind on my coffee. I need some coffee. He was a millionaire before the books, and the books are part of a scam. Who buys those books, right? Nobody buys those books. And you only have to sell 10,000 books to be a New York Times best-selling author. A lot of people don't know that. People think you got to sell millions of books. He's not Stephen King, who sells millions of books every time he releases something and gets movie deals. Most writers, even the top writers, are not rich from the books. They're rich from the movie deals. Clancy, Stephen King. They, what the politicians do, and they do this with media people too, they buy them off through the fake books that nobody buys, right? They have donors buy the books. They do big book buys with the party. They do all kinds of scams in the book buying. Not many people buy those books. One of their scams. Sometimes they run GoFundMes for things to pay people off these days. But book sales is one of the biggest scams. Yep. Very true. Believe me, I've been following this stuff for years. That's right, MAGA for life, damn straight. If you're new to my channel, make sure that you subscribe. In just over an hour, I'll be in the studio taking your live calls on all of these things. But no, the Birthright Citizenship was a major win for President Trump yesterday, a major win. Everybody knows this. And I will explain it. Busy morning on a dark highway. Some of these trucks have some of the brightest lights on them. There we go. No, Bernie and all these. I mean, look. How did Ilhan Omar and AOC and Presley become millionaires? They were broke. They go to Congress. They're millionaires like 2 years later. Give me a break. And then they go on a Stop the Oligarchy tour on private jets. They're the oligarchy. They make money from nothing. They're corrupt public officials. Very corrupt public officials. All right, 2 exits to my exit, thankfully. We're getting there. Oh man, I need some coffee pretty bad. If you're new, make sure you subscribe. This is most definitely where MAGA comes to talk. No spamming, please. I could put up with a lot, but no spamming. All right, my exit is next. I don't mind disagreement, but just don't spam. Yeah, liberals are creeps. There's no doubt about it. Democrats are creeps. I agree with whoever said that. You're correct. Press 1 in the chat if you love Trump. Press 1 if you love Trump. Yes. Awesome. All right, my exit is the next exit. Well, a lot of Trump love in there, see? Who's in the cult now? Right, the trolls, they're in the cult. Tiny little group of never Trumpers are in this country. Most of the country are MAGA. It's a fact. Most of the country are MAGA. No doubt about it. That's right. Look at all that Trump love. I don't want to miss my exit. This exit's a one it's so easy to miss. Now you guys at the beginning of, if you missed the beginning of the stream, you'll want to go back and watch it. I'm going to give more detail on it on the morning show, but the Supreme Court birthright citizenship issue was a major victory for Donald Trump and the MAGA movement yesterday. That Supreme Court decision on birthright citizenship. So I'm gonna, and I broke down some reasons why. I'll give more. All numbers mean you love Trump, by the way, not just one. All numbers mean you love Trump. But it was a massive win, the birthright citizenship decision for Trump, as I spelled out at the beginning of the stream. Hang in there, guys. Usually I'm the only one at this exit. I've got company today. I'm in shock. This is a neighborhood where people are not out on the roads too much at this hour of the morning. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. An exciting day. Exciting day. No doubt. And those of you that are members of the channel, don't forget you got those members only emojis. Guy walking in a parking lot at 4:47 in the morning. He saw my lights and he started running. What's that about? What's he up to? A little up to something there. Walking in a parking lot. 4:47 in the morning. I came by and he took off running, and then he stopped when he saw I wasn't a cop. I don't know. What's that guy up to? It's not good, whatever it is. Not good. Yeah, so am I, Johnny. Now if you missed the stream, go back and you'll hear me go over how Trump won the Supreme Court decision, Birthright Citizenship, yesterday. I just got the Starbucks, so I'm going to take and go through the news a little bit more, but I will see you all in about an hour, okay, on the morning show. Take care.